Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. My name is John. It's very good to see you again at WordSesh 3. So this is my second Fireside chat, and uh, and I have the WordSesh.org live page up. So if you have questions for me, I will do my best to answer them. So um, I am coming to you from East Troy, Wisconsin, where it is very cold today. And a little bit of snow, but we don't really have any on the ground, so I can't show you a very white Christmas at this point. But I do have this tree. Oh, the lights are off. Oh, that's very sad. I don't know why the lights are off. Um, so we really, my wife and I did our best to try and decorate the house and be very festive. But um, my fireside chats have a tendency to drift in lots of different directions, um, but I do have some fun things to talk about, and I realized when I was uh, kind of doing some preparation and um, some thinking about what I would really talk about for my word sesh um, that I have a ton of half-written blog posts that um, I sort of, I would love to get around to finishing and writing, um, but it might be easier to maybe uh, pontificate slightly about some of the things that I have a tendency to kind of think about on a daily basis, kind of every day, but never really finish the thought. So I figured doing it on a camera in front of some people might force me to put some thoughts together. Uh, so one of the things that I've talked about quite a bit recently that a lot of people have been curious about or have asked about has been my recent Indiegogo campaign and what it's like to raise money, to do some campaigning, to try and really just ask for time to finish some of the things that um, I feel like I have had on the back burner for a really long time. And one of the interesting things about Indiegogo uh, is it makes I'm gonna probably say this too simply, but it makes asking for money really easy. Is that weird, right? Like, I think one of the things that makes a business person successful or a salesperson successful is really the ability to confidently ask someone for money, right? Like that's a big deal, and especially in an open source community where we're kind of accustomed to volunteering our time and giving some of that time away for free, knowing that it eventually does come back in dividends. Uh, where Indiegogo kind of wraps that up very simply, and I'm assuming Kickstarter probably does the same, um, where it really breaks down the process of uh, putting your thought together, making sure that you have a video, giving you the short URL, giving you perks and sort of some hand holding on what other successful campaigns have looked like. And so my experience, one, with Indiegogo was extremely positive. So if anyone is considering what Indiegogo looks like on the administration end of it, I would say give it a try if there's something that you would like to campaign for. Um, I would personally love to see anyone that has a pie in the sky idea for a WordPress plugin, or even someone like Jeremy Felt, who really worked hard on varying vagrants, mostly in spare time, which I think is a tool that a lot of us probably use on a day-to-day basis. That's now 10up invested pretty heavily in the beginning, but was generous enough to to let free the same way that Matt let WordPress free a few years ago, and if it came down to Jeremy wanting some money to continue to develop and improve VVV for some reason, it would be pretty excellent for him to confidently put up an Indiegogo campaign, ask for some money to do it, and then to know that the WordPress community would rally behind him for that, right? And there are lots of plugins and libraries and things that we use on a day-to-day basis that maybe don't have some of the financial support that they could or should. PHP sometimes is one of them, right? It's sort of this somewhat invisible part of the WordPress stack that we take for granted because it's so readily available on every server that you spin up, and you sudo apt-get install PHP 5, it all comes in, yay, you never think about it again, right? So there are people that are constantly working on these code bases that I guess we are fortunate enough to never intersect with, because they normally work so incredibly flawlessly that we don't really even have to think about them. And it reminds me that, and I tweeted something about this a few days ago, where we're really lucky, I think, in the WordPress community, where we've built a very simple and easy to navigate ecosystem of tens of thousands of plugins and thousands of themes, all being sort of moderated and ran by a mostly volunteer team of people, which I think is, if you were going to tell someone that this was how the internet was ran 20 years ago, they wouldn't have believed you, right? Like, it just, on paper, it doesn't really make a, it's not believable. I don't think, but it is reality, right? Like, the fact that this many people can band together and build something as simple to use and big and great as WordPress and the plugins and themes that are powering it, it's pretty friggin' sweet. So I think the thing with my Indiegogo campaign is certainly I will benefit, and the things that I want to do and the projects that I work on will directly benefit from everybody's generosity. But I do hope that the spirit of what it really looks like and means to contribute to helping support other open source projects is what my Indiegogo campaign helps really bring to light. That there are a lot of pieces of software that we do interact with that are dependent on a lot of the things that we do, or client work that we do, and certainly as the internet gets more complicated, you can't throw $100 at every single one of those things. But there is something nice about knowing that if someone, if a PHP core developer has an emergency, or if we really need to improve VVV for some reason and Jeremy needs to take the time to do it, that it would be really excellent to have an emergency fund, or to have there be a backup plan in place to really help those projects along when they need it. So if anything, I hope that my Indiegogo campaign sort of helps exemplify a little bit that is a viable alternative to, I guess, asking for investment, or mortgaging your home, or maybe doing all sorts of other things that potentially cause more stress and more distractions than just asking the community for money does. So if there are questions about the Indiegogo campaign, I think that there's one in the chat now that I'll read here in a second. I will always be happy to help, and um, and answer anything that comes in about them. And if someone is interested in starting their own campaign, also happy to help share some of my experiences with that if anyone has any questions. One of the questions that came in here from Dee in the live chat, she says congratulations, so thank you very kindly. She asks, what's the first cab off the rank in terms of parts of that project that you're going to tackle? And the first thing that the Indiegogo campaign will enable me to do is going to be, well, there'll be two things. I think some of the performance improvements that Boone has been working on, Boone Gerges, for caching a lot of our objects and doing some performance improvements to some of our MySQL queries will continue to happen. One of the things that working with the folks at WP Engine this month and trying to figure out what BuddyPress is doing wrong in terms of killing Facebook's hip hop virtual machine relatively easily is an indication to me that there are some things that we have done that, or at least in the BuddyPress project over time that has gone into it, that that will need some deeper refactoring, I suppose, to just improve the general, behavior and making it play nice, and trying to improve a lot of the, I don't know, I guess the bad reputation that it has for being a very big, bulky, monolithic performance hog. Because I don't know that it really is, other than it just loading in a whole ton of PHP, which is a problem in and of itself, but not a big deal when you can handle the memory management and cache it correctly. And so that'll, I think, be the first one. Part of it also is really getting reacclimated with some of the newer code that's gone in from iMath and Ray and Boone. Some of it is stuff that I've reviewed, over the course of the past year in passing to make sure that it was something that I felt we would all benefit from, or that was in line with the spirit and the direction of BuddyPress as a project. But they've all been really excellent at managing themselves and their own expectations and their times. And just like there are things in WordPress core now, like the customizer, that I haven't needed to directly touch or really work with on a day-to-day basis, there are a few things in BuddyPress now that are things I haven't needed to work with directly myself. So the first things will be getting acclimated with some of the newer code, and then working on performance improvements and things right off of the bat, so that we can start really, actively deploying it on WordPress.org and really looking at what the long-term vision for BuddyPress and profiles on WordPress.org looks like, and being able to do so in a way where we all know that it's going to perform well and at least up to our own expectations. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. There are some things I think that I would like. There are a few little features in BuddyPress that I would still like for it to do and be. And I've talked a little bit about how when Andy Peatling was first working and developing BuddyPress, and it was a WordPress MU only plugin, and all of the plugins were broken up into individual little MU plugins, very similar to the way that some of the plugins are loaded on WordPress.com. The way that BuddyPress worked then was severely different than what it is now. Every one of the components and interactions happened within WP admin. So your friends were in WP admin, your profile, your avatar changing, everything happened within the dashboard. And I've always really loved that idea, not just from an administration standpoint, but from a separation of the function of the site and the blog versus the the community that lives inside of the WordPress network itself. And I think that WordPress.com, in a very roundabout way, has started to implement some of what that looks like on the WordPress.com homepage, the logged in homepage of the dashboard there, where you have a list of sites and sites that you're following and posts that are coming in from the sites that you've opted into following. And one of the unique struggles that that I think we had while I was at Automatic, and that I think Matt had kind of always seen pretty clearly, but had a hard time convincing a lot of people within Automatic, at least when I was there, was that on WordPress.com, your blog is you, right? Like, even though you can have 10 blogs, you can have 10 sites, that and something in the 98% of WordPress.com users don't have multiple blogs. So it's very clear that when you start a site on WordPress.com, that site identifies you, right? Like, we may have access to several Twitter accounts, but there is one Twitter account that is clearly you. And I don't know that WordPress.com is really that dissimilar. So BuddyPress was originally architected kind of with that in mind, right? There are some function references in BuddyPress, like get user domain name, that sort of hint at the idea that a user and their subdomain were one and one, and they were hand in hand. And it's something that we don't really think about or talk about much anymore, but I still think that in WordPress and multi-site that there is something to that idea. And I like to think about what BuddyPress would look like if we were going to start over. If we were going to start it today, maybe we would use custom post types and taxonomies, and you could store friend-to-friend relationships as custom post types, and you could store your activity log and your site, and we'd have a central pointer table for pulling activity items in. And there are different ways that I think we could have architected it today compared to what it is now as a result of some of the moving and the adapting that we've done to WordPress multi-site merging into WordPress single site, and just a lot of the API changes and improvements that have gone into WordPress enable for a relatively radical approach to something like BuddyPress today if someone was going to start it over again. So bringing some of the administration functions back into WP Admin for BuddyPress is a thing that I've always wanted to reconsider. Something like moderating or managing private messages. Now there's an argument to say that private messages between two users are private, and that no one should have access to that information, and I do agree to that to a certain extent, but there should be a fairly simple administrative interface for a site admin to be able to look and see that someone's being harassed privately, and to be able to manage and take care of that. And right now, BuddyPress doesn't offer that capability. So having there be an interface for looking at things like private messages, or for creating new groups within the administration area, for moderating friend requests, or being able to clean up spam friend requests and those kind of things. There just isn't an interface. We have some APIs that exist to help bulk edit some of those things, but they're not very straightforward. And at the very least, they're not the WordPress way of providing a nice list table to very clearly see what is connected to that data and then make a decision about it. So those are a few of the things that I personally would really like to do, and like for BuddyPress to have that it doesn't, that I think would make people feel a little bit more comfortable with deploying it on their own WordPress site. Comments, I've some people may have heard this rant before, but comments in WordPress are crazy. They're an open, exposed forum to let anyone write data to your MySQL database. That's weird, guys, right? Like but it's less weird because we have the Cases API to sort of prevent malicious tags from getting in there, and we have a comment moderator dashboard that makes it easy to see what's spam and what you need to trash and what you need to get rid of. And for BuddyPress, we don't have an API, we don't have a UI for moderating things like private messages or spam friend requests. So even though it's relatively simple, I think having that would make a lot of site administrators much more comfortable with deploying BuddyPress out to their audience that is probably apprehensive about doing it today. The next question that actually kind of rolls right into one of the blog posts that I have unfinished from Bryce is where do I draw my inspiration from? I think I had posted a picture of Paul the dog on Instagram, sort of joking around that that he's the one that inspires me the most. But and he does definitely, because he's a dog, and dogs are just incredible companions. I really wasn't a dog person until Jess Jurek, who works at 10up, met her puppy soulmate, and they bonded so obviously, and it was, I don't know, it was just neat to watch happen. So when I found Paul, it was that connection, right? It was just nice to know that that I had a little I don't know. I had my own little Harry Potter owl. I had my own little Hedwig, right? Like my little familiar to follow me around and teach and learn and take with me. I don't know. There's just something really nice about having a dog. I know it sounds really silly, but even though I wasn't a dog person before, Paul the dog definitely made me a dog person for sure. But what actually inspires me is a funny question. So the unwritten blog post that I have about influences and inspiration goes in a bunch of funny different directions, but I would say that there were a few influences in my life that probably don't know they were influences, and they're probably pretty. One of my earliest influences that has a funny story behind it that I'll try not to dwell too much on, that will sound like a non sequitur at first, but I promise is actually relevant, is Johnny Carson. Does everybody know who Johnny Carson is? It was a late night TV show host, and so when I was like, I bet you I was 5 years old, and my parents were kind enough to give me like a 9-inch black and white TV in my bedroom so I could play Atari or Coleco or little video games, and I would stay up really late and watch late night TV, and I don't know what it was about Johnny Carson, but he always made me laugh, even when I was like 5 or 6. Like the jokes, even though they were I probably didn't really understand what half of them meant. Johnny Carson was always this happy, hilarious presence, right? That was a little bit silly and super creative and genuinely happy and nice, like to guests and people that were on his show all the time. And Uh, so Johnny Carson for me very early on, and there's actually a really interesting documentary I think about him on Netflix that is very revealing, but is also uh, I don't know, reminds me about being a kid and staying up late and watching TV and this black and white television and making sure my parents didn't know. And and I think that was where I got a lot of my sense of humor from. And as a result, kind of learned to not take myself too seriously and enjoyed trying to make people smile and laugh at like a very early age. And that carried me into, I remember very distinctly being, uh, it was in second grade, and my teacher was Mrs. Achenbach, and uh, and we were reading books in front of the class, and one of the books that my mom had read to me, when I was a kid, well, there are a few of them, right? There was the Pokey Little Puppy, the Velveteen Rabbit, and the monster at the end of this book with Grover. And I don't remember what it was about that book, but it brought out the Johnny Carson in me, where it was just so animated and hilarious that when I would read this book in front of my second grade class, that I was able to just scream it and be animated about it, and having kids laugh at you, and being in front of a stage or in front of an audience, or having people genuinely enjoy just you being kind of silly in front of them, uh, was really, I don't know, it was fun. And so I think that I had a lot of strange influences that I wouldn't have thought about at the time, that that early on kind of shaped. Um, I don't know. They helped me be a little bit more comfortable in front of people. They they helped slow me down a little bit and kind of remind me to think about some things before you say them, which sometimes I find pretty difficult. Um, and then, I mean, my parents were huge influences. My dad's a super hard worker, but very, very career driven. Didn't necessarily love his job, but stuck with it, and made sure that things got done, and that um, he would do his hardest and try his hardest to um, continue to put food on the table, and try and make home a happy and fun place to be. And so my parents were big influences also. And but um, my inspiration, I guess, is, I mean, the WordPress community in and of itself is very obvious, but uh, there's something. I guess the thing with Indiegogo campaign and tying that back into my inspiration is that uh, we all sort of have this unique opportunity right now to influence the direction that the entire world is going in, and that's a big deal, right? I mean, the whole, like, democratizing publishing with WordPress and enabling people to have very simple and easy websites and open source philosophies, and uh, are critical in times when things like net neutrality are smacking us in the face every single day, and big businesses are coming back with more and more uh, just ridiculous ways to encroach on a lot of our freedoms of expression and our freedoms to be creative. Uh, and we right now, every single day, can make a difference and try and change that. And when else in our lives will we ever have that opportunity again, right? Uh, and if you don't act on it, you at least I feel, if I don't act on it by trying to do what I can, that I will I will regret that pretty immensely later. And something that is as popular and necessary as Buddy Press, I think, for allowing smaller communities of people to get together and formulate their thoughts in a place that's safe, safe and secure and away from Facebook or Twitter uh, is a big deal. I mean, that was a lot of where, I mean, I grew up in forums and car forums and software forums, and uh, that was a lot of where I learned a lot. I met a lot of people, had a lot of really cool experiences as a result of those small communities, and it not taking the time to focus on those pieces of software, and not recognizing the impact that they can make and that I can help them make, uh, would be an absolutely squandered opportunity if I looked back on it 10 years from now and didn't try and campaign for their future success. So in a lot of ways, my inspiration is what is really trying to shape what the future of niche community sites look like, and enabling for people to spin up a relatively simple and robust way for their group of friends or colleagues or people to talk back and forth, um, that they, you otherwise wouldn't have the software to empower them to do. So um, and there's a few other questions that are coming in, and I think I've only got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to take a second here to read through these. So Brian Krogsgaard asks, what has working on Phlox taught me about WordPress and BuddyPress, and what does it make me want in either platform? So that's a really super good question that I can answer quickly, because I think that there are a few other questions in here. But Phlox has been a really fun and very, very interesting experiment for the groups of people that I've let in to kind of be the VIP, very base level beta testers. And the one part of WordPress that is lacking, that I will try to secretly influence over the course of the next 6 months, is multi-site and multi-network, both of which are a little bit lacking in terms of their feature set compared to what single-site WordPress is. Some of the caching of options on the site level isn't there. Switch to blog doesn't necessarily pull in some of the things that you would want for it to. There is no switch to network. We don't have the ability to easily get site meta from one network to another. There are just some things that don't exist, and the code to write them is not difficult, but the code to architect them in a way that looks like what the future of WordPress should look like, and have the correct objects and the correct attributes, and then ensuring backwards compatibility, and then writing all of the unit tests to make sure that we don't break the world in the process, I think are where brilliant people like Jeremy Felt and Ryan McHugh and other people that are actively focusing and looking at multi-site, multi-network are going to be huge, huge influences. So for WordPress, the multi-site, multi-network part of it is what I'd like, and then for BuddyPress, the thing that's the most apparent is just is performance. There are some very clear things, like having the community be completely private, and having BuddyPress be able to keep that community private. That would be nice. That's not built into it today. The ability to pick sign-up fields or fields specifically for registration out of the extended profiles component would be nice. There is tiny features in BuddyPress that that will eventually get pulled out of Phlox and rolled into BuddyPress core, as they sort of fit with the vision of what I think everyone else might want to do, or as the core team believes that some of these things might make sense to be in BuddyPress core. But maybe this would sound a little funny, but it was actually pretty proud of how how little really needed to go into BuddyPress and WordPress to make something like Phlox possible. I really spent more time uh, on systems and sort of DevOps stuff that I haven't needed to refresh my brain on in a long time. I probably spent more time on building an infrastructure of web nodes and a Memcache server and a load balancer and all the things that I've, to be honest, really taken for granted and not. At Automatic we had an amazing systems team, and 10up did also. So those were things that just happened, and while I've definitely done those things years ago, they were things I hadn't needed to do in years. So I spent more time building the platform than really building the Phlox software, the network itself. That, I think, the very obvious one is having a killer mobile interface. BuddyPress right now is sort of responsive, and it sort of adapts to other responsive themes, but it's a pretty crappy experience. I mean, we've definitely done an amazing job at making it adaptable, but it's not the killer experience that we've all come to expect. So having a sweet mobile experience for BuddyPress is where I think the people will start to appreciate the power and the ease of use, and just the I don't know what a unique and just killer tool that something like BuddyPress can be when it's alive in your pocket and you have immediate access to the group of people that you want to talk to that are the most important to you or whatever. So hopefully that answers your question, Brian. Jenny Wong has a very important announcement that I agree is worth sharing, where she would like me to plead with everyone to check your PHP versions and be sure to stay on top of them and upgrade them, which is a big deal, right? I mean, the whole stack, right? Recently there was even like a Git and was it Mercurial had their own security releases that came out. So anyone that's currently maybe doing the wrong thing but doing deployments via a Git pull, if you're running an outdated, insecure version of Git, you're just as susceptible, right? So just try and stay on top of. There's so many libraries now; it's very difficult to stay on top of them. But the time that you spend just checking in with what libraries your WordPress sites are running on and what that stack looks like, and making sure that they are up to date, saves you huge amounts of time later on. And if it's something that you maybe feel like you're not qualified to do, maybe feel like the time is not valuable for you to spend to do those things, there are people that do want to do those things, and that may even do them for you or with you, and help you with the things that you don't want to do, and you can help them with the things that you want to do, right? Like, there is something to be said for not just volunteering your time to an open source project, but volunteering your time to just help others, right? And help each other do the things that you wouldn't otherwise maybe want to do on your own. Mr. David Bissett, my personal friend from years ago, and starting the WordPress meetup and WordCamp Miami and all of the Refresh Miami roots that we share, has a question, and he asks, can you tell us more about the WP Engine sponsorship and what is expected, what the expected increases are once that happens, and what the general expectations and timelines are? So, they've been really great to work with, in that they have sort of let me set and meet and or not meet my own expectations of what it is to try and get BuddyPress really working inside of HHVM. And since HHVM only recently has some Xdebug support and since the type of application that WordPress and BuddyPress are, once they're paired together, makes it a little bit weird to try and troubleshoot inside of HHVM. It's not been easy to figure out exactly what's causing some of the seg faults that are coming in, particularly because inside of a virtual machine, it's pretty easy to just kill WordPress even running by itself when it's running HHVM. You throw Siege at it with a few concurrent users, and you can take down WordPress and HHVM pretty quickly just by itself. So we've basically been just trying to take down live servers and looking at logs and going through and figuring out what exactly is causing BuddyPress specifically to hang on to some CPU and some and not take advantage of HHVM's ability to kind of clean up after itself. So I think the expected increases are huge. I have a hunch that it comes down to some of our BP component file exists checks and doing some file system scanning that maybe we could limit, but I haven't tested that theory yet. So timelines are really to try and have something concrete and some improvements done and in by the end of this month, so that there can be a a relatively clean break between some of the work that I'm doing for them and when the Indiegogo campaign would start on January probably 2nd, because I really would like to keep some of that stuff as separate and some of that work as separate as possible. But if we're on the verge of something and WP Engine wants to stay on top of that, then I don't know that anyone would really be opposed to continuing improvements and having WP Engine help out with some of that. So, so hopefully that answers your question, David. And if you have others, please ask. Happy to share. Mr. James Tyran, let's get back to that toy collectible question. Arms reach and favorite. Oh man, I have a box of Paul's dog toys here, but that's probably not what you want to see. I don't want to make everybody sick by picking my laptop up and walking around over to the toy shelf in my old office here. But here we go. We're gonna do this. This is live TV for you folks, I guess, right? So. This is my wall of toys. I think my personal favorites are Samus from Metroid. The figurine is all posable, very very awesome, very true to the game, and then the Lego DeLorean is probably one of my favorites also. You can't forget 25th anniversary Voltron, and yeah, those are my favorites on the wall. But my wife and I have recently gotten very heavily into building Legos together. So our current toy addiction is the Creator series. So I built a plow truck. We've got a little Lego train going around a tree, and that's our current toy addiction. I think I have Legos under the tree for Christmas as gifts, but I'm not supposed to know that, so don't tell anybody. And then Jenny wanted to know when I'm due to start on Indiegogo time. So I think January 2nd is really what's in my imagination. I think originally I had planned on doing it right away, but right away when the campaign ended, which would have been last week, I think, or the week ago, 2 weeks ago. But WP Engine was kind enough to approach me and talk about some of their improvements that they want to do to their efforts in getting WordPress and some of the more popular surrounding projects humming along quickly and nicely in their HHVM environment. I think that there are huge wins for running WordPress and any of the plugins that you would bolt into it in HHVM. So when they had asked, it was kind of a no-brainer to take advantage of their generosity, and they're a bunch of really, really good guys. And I don't know, they're awesome. I know sometimes WP Engine, maybe people have had weird experiences, or they have a bad reputation for this or that every once in a while, and I've heard the same thing even with Strable and Pagely, and I know Matt catches a bunch of flack for I don't know, just all sorts of things, and it's really easy to be critical of some of the decisions or some of the things that we say and some of the efforts that we put into things, and I think that, you know, as the WordPress community gets bigger and as we have more companies and businesses and more interest at play, and as we all sort of struggle to be more successful and try and change the world in really awesome ways, that it's important that we try to remember that we are all just people trying to do really cool stuff with WordPress, and we are, right? Like, a lot of people are crushing it, and everyone is trying to build the best possible product and environment and reputation as they can. And in my experience with everyone in the WordPress community, at their individual businesses, at the places that they work, with their contributions, at WordCamps, at events, at Automatic, at 10up, Human Made, Web Dev Studios, obviously. Everyone is killing it, and the best thing that we can do for each other is just be cool, right? Be nice, and try and, you know, help out with whatever it is that we can. I'll close this with one neat story, because I think I'm already a minute or two over, maybe 5. But one of the neater stories about Automatic, and I think this happened right when I had joined, was I think Tumblr was having some issues, having like some systems problems, and the systems team at Automatic reached out to offer Tumblr to help, like genuinely, not like in a like, oh, ha ha ha, that sucks for you kind of way, but in a like, what is it that we can do to help you continue to be the best that you can be? And I thought that was a very generous gesture, and so things like that matter. Like, people remember things like that, and so I guess my closing statement would be, 1, Merry Christmas, and 2, be cool to each other, and before we're critical about what somebody else is trying to achieve or pulling off or doing, to try and offer to be helpful instead. So thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for giving me an hour of your time. Thank you to everyone very sincerely for contributing to my Indiegogo campaign. And I will see you around on the internet. And if I can help, you know where to find me. Twitter at JJJ, John James Jacoby, pretty much everywhere else. And cheers. Thank you.